Hi there, and welcome again to another edition of Peninsula Players Presents the History of Peninsula Players Theatre. And I'm here once again with Audie. Hello, Audie,
Hey, Greg.
whose head and mine are full of history right now.
It really is. All that's in there, and I'm excited to share it.
Yeah. Now we're going to be covering the year 1947, but you certainly feel, I think, Audie, you too, that during this period, the company that comprised Peninsula Players and the Fishers who founded the theater were really ambitious.
They were very ambitious, and I think very excited to be back doing what they loved the most, which
Hmm.
was theater and
Yes,
entertaining and being together. And
which is a feeling I think we will all have once COVID is over and we can get back to, doing what we love to do on stage.
exactly, yes.
Yeah. So, as we normally do with these things, I just want to remind people that in the last edition of this, we left off the Labor Day weekend of 1946 was very, very busy in Door County, which was a good thing for all the businesses. And the players had a successful season. And then because we're a seasonal theater, normally during the rest of the year, winter, fall, spring, the company spreads out all over the place. And I mean, that's been going on since the theater started and still does today. And so trying to catch up on a little bit of what was going on with them during the winter and a little bit to set the scene about what was going on in the world. So some of the people coming back, Leo Lucker was coming back,
Yes.
and he was now had an assistant director title.
Yes, he was given a title because he was helping Richard not only direct some of the shows, but he was also helping screen and select apprentices and other members of the company as well. So he's
And
given that
he had
title.
been in New York,
He and Richard both, I believe, are in New York at this time.
and
And
they're scouting talent
they're scouting talent and working with the American Theater Wing. And I don't know what projects they're working on. That has remained, I'm not sure, but it was the establishment of that organization within that time. And that year, too, was the first year that the Tony Awards made their official debut. So,
because and that's run by the American Theater Wing,
right,
an
yes.
organization. And Caroline, she spends the winter in
In
Rome
Rome, because Rodion, her husband, who is now discharged from the Royal Canadian Air Force, has accepted a position with TWA as a pilot, and he has the route from Rome to Cairo that he's flying. So Caroline and the family went to Rome to live post-war, and at a point Richard was there as well. He went to visit Caroline because he also wanted to tour Europe
and he was writing about European theater.
and he was writing about European theater. That's right. But Caroline, while she was there, it's post-war, and she's witnessing a lot of the strife that the people of Italy are going through, especially
Hmm.
the children. And being a mom herself, she has a real affinity and affection for the suffering that is going on there. And she's volunteering with the mission while she's there to help with that situation. And
And in fact, when she returns to Door County, she does some speaking about that.
she does. So she went and spoke in June when she returned to Door County, and it was questionable whether or not she was going to come back. So they weren't sure if she was going to come back from Rome or not, but she did. And when she returned, she spoke to a church in Green Bay, the Green Bay Congregational Church, and also then in Egg Harbor that same week to the Ladies Guild about the situation that's there and what she saw. And the articles that ran in the press kind of commented on her speech. So when she was at the Union Congregational Church, she was telling them how she met these families that didn't have homes. They were living in caves because their village had been completely destroyed.
Mm.
So they were living near a quarry and inside of these caves. And when she would do her work with the missionary work and bring in clothing and shoes for the children, how excited the mothers were to just get a new dress for their kid. Or it was, she just said, her quote here is, I had read articles and heard people talk about the situation, but until I saw what these people are suffering, did I realize the depths of their misery.
Mm.
So she became really connected and passionate about helping these people. So one of the things that she did at the theater was built a larger canteen. And from that canteen, she called it Caroline's Canteen, and all of the profits were to go to the missionary work to help the children.
And just catching up also on their parents, Mama Lydia Fisher and C.R. They were, Mama was working on costumes during the year.
And Papa is always doing repair work around the property and fixing this and that and getting things going.
And Mama was taking care of the business end of things because Caroline wasn't there.
Right. So she was paying bills or getting things reset up and reestablished for the company to come move back onto property.
And they did manage a trip to Mexico before the
They did.
summer.
They needed a little bit of a break and a little bit of sunshine before she dived back into working in the kitchen and feeding the whole crew. So
Another person that came back was Simon Scott.
Simon, yes, and Simon had been during the war years in Honolulu with the Coast Guard, but he also now has been on tour. He's gotten into some Shakespeare companies touring across the nation, performing at high schools. He has uh, also become affiliated with,
Eva Le Gallienne.
and he comes back, as does Helen Casey Bragdon. So it's nice to have some stalwart returning company members. And Leo has been there since the founding. So from 1935 to now 1947, he's been their leading man. So to have that mature person there to help lead the company is a wonderful asset for them.
Right. And Jean Sincere
And
comes back
she
from.
does. And on what's happening in 1947 in movies and plays is Miracle on 34th Street is going to be showing in the movies, and All My Sons, Finian's Rainbow, and Brigadoon have all opened on Broadway, and Jean Sincere is a member of that cast of Brigadoon. So she is going to be leaving that cast to come back to Door County.
And then this is also the year that Jim McKenzie
She,
started as an apprentice.
he did, and I just read last night, and what I read from several people, he was a little nervous to meet Caroline because he was a little starstruck. So he actually brought his mother with him to introduction to have some support when he applied to an apprenticeship to be an apprentice that summer. And I've also heard this from Maggie Magerstadt that Caroline came to talk to her mother before coming to the property. And I know she's visited other families even off the season. So Caroline was very interested in the family connection and supporting the young artisans and getting them up on their feet, just like she's been supporting Richard since
Hmm.
his night was 19. So that was a very passionate goal of hers as well. So
And Jim was from Appleton.
Jim wasn't, yes, he was from Appleton, and he served in World War II, and then he was attending university in Iowa as well. And Jim has a very long history with Peninsula Players and will remain connected in our conversations.
Oh, yes. Actually, 55 years starting this year, 1947,
Yes,
until he passed away in 2002.
yes.
And he went from being an apprentice and working, doing tech and carpenter and acting.
Carpentry and stage management, and even a few acting roles. So he was
Hmm.
on stage this season as well in a few small parts. So,
And he went on to own the theater and be its executive producer till he died.
correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So
And I think that's a sort of common thread with a lot of company members that have gone through Peninsula Players is the longevity of their association with the theater and their because they love coming back and love the company.
They
And you
do. They
mentioned
become
that
repeat.
one of the improvements on the property going into 1947 was Caroline's Canteen.
Caroline's Canteen, and they also added another housing cabin that was,
Yes, tell us about that
yes,
glorious
it
thing.
is known at that time as the Southern Mansion, and that's because it was the farthest cabin and became the largest one room single cabin on property. And it was brought in especially for Rhodian's mother, Marion Foreman Rathbone, who was going to be coming to visit her grandkids that season and be in a show. So she was going to be in the importance of being earnest, and she was also going to help teach elocution to the company members. So she was going to help with the
So
presentation.
what was the mansion?
The mansion, Caroline, and here's this is Caroline was very charismatic. She kept the theater going, and her personality, she was able to borrow furniture, clothing, and all sorts of materials. So she was talking to someone, and they said, well, you know what? Why don't you take my old garage? I'm not using the structure. So they brought in this old garage and retrofitted it for Marion so she could have her own private cabin while she was visiting. Now, as we mentioned in previous videos, how we're located in what used to be a former boys' camp. So no one has a private bathroom. It's really like summer camp. You have a shower caddy and you go from your cabin to the bathroom. Well, Marion needed her own private bathroom time. So there was a sign on the door of the ladies' bathroom that was, this is Marion's bathroom time from this time to this time. Don't bother her. So she had her own private bathroom for that time while she was there visiting, and
Yeah, and
Kelly
this was a
came and
woman who had some standing in theater and
theater was her love and her passion. So this is who raised Rhodian, was someone very active in theater. She's performed since the age of 15 with a Shakespearean company in British that toured all over, that toured America in the early years. She was considered the best viola that Mr. Benson had ever worked with on
from
stage.
Shakespeare's Twelfth Night.
And she had also performed at the Stratford on Avon Shakespeare Festival at a young age, and that's how she met Basil Rathbone. Was they were both performing together in this company,
Hmm.
and they got married before World War I.
And she had, by the time I got to the Players, I lived for a few years in the mansion. It didn't quite live up to its name, and certainly had to get used to getting up to go to the bathroom at 3 a.m. But sometimes, if it wasn't raining, it was kind of glorious because of the night sky.
Yes, and it is the closest cabin to the bathroom.
Yes. Yes. Another building that was there at the time was there was a box office at the top of the stairs at the back of the theater.
There was, and that's where, from the main office where the business office was, you would have to carry the night's work up there every evening. And even I got to do this when I
Yeah.
first started. We didn't have the computerized ticketing system, so it was all tickets on the walls and tickets in boxes, and you're shuffling them through and writing orders out. And so you had to get a box and carry all this stuff up the stairs every night to get reset up and take care of the patrons for that business every night. So you had your upper parking lot and people coming down. So that's just been there, was there for decades as well.
And of course, once we got the computer system in, we stopped using it as a box office up there. But the that little gazebo remained there until the new theater was built in 2006.
Correct. And for many, many decades, patrons would walk up and buy their tickets there. And sometimes, at some point, at this time, they had outlet offices. So there was a place that you could pick up tickets in Green Bay and in Sturgeon Bay at a drugstore and at a leather goods store in Green Bay. So there was a block of tickets that you can
Hmm.
pick up from there. So
Another thing they did this season was they put together a souvenir booklet.
they did, and they have a sample. So in 1947, they put together this souvenir booklet that they sold for 50 cents at the Canteen, and it has some lovely, lovely images and describes Caroline in it and some of the scenery and so forth. But it was kind of exciting for them to put that together because this really is their 10th year on this site. So,
Amazing.
founded in 1935, they're now up to at least the 10th year on the land that we are still on and
Yes.
producing at. So they've had some big projects that year.
So before we get into what they actually did during the 47 season, just to set the tone and set the stage for how, what was going uh, on January 6th in 47, Harry S. Truman delivered the first televised State of the Union address. And so, as Audra, as you have pointed out, television becomes the beginning of television becoming a big thing.
It is. And at that time in 47 was really when television sets too were starting to be produced. So it is the second year after the war, but because of the war years with rationing, a lot of materials were really going towards the war effort. So the manufacturing of new automobiles or the development of the television sets were just kind of put on hold. But now all of this stuff is coming out, and people are starting to purchase the sets, which don't look like traditional TVs today, and new automobiles. So there's this exciting activity going on, and soldiers are getting onto the GI Bill and entering schools, and so there's a real growth and potential and
The baby boom generation
baby
is
boomers.
starting.
Yes,
And this is
and
also the year when the basically the Cold War started.
and we're introduced to Howdy Doody, frisbees, and Tupperware.
Tupperware and Howdy Doody, I can understand. Frisbee sounds like something later. Also, on April 1st of that year, of 47, Jackie Robinson was the first African American to be signed in to the Brooklyn Dodgers in Major League Baseball. And as Audie mentioned, April 6th was the first Tony Awards, the theater awards that are given out every year in New York. And the other thing that I found fascinating was on May 6th, Wisconsin experienced an earthquake
Whoa, whoa.
that was felt over a great deal of southeastern Wisconsin. And then there was another one in August.
I just, yeah, wow. Wow. Just so
So
everything going on.
as we're going into the 1947 season of plays, and again, this is very ambitious.
We're very ambitious, and going from not knowing if Caroline's going to be there to announcing they're going to do a festival of great plays. So they don't announce like what the plays are going to be, but they've announced that they're going to do outstanding theater, 2 weeks straight of nightly performances running July 24th to August 10th. So whatever they've got cooking, and they're ambitious because they're going to keep going with everything. So
Yes, so in this year they do 12 plays, and I believe in 48 and 49 they do 11 plays. And as Audie was trying to wrap her head around how they did this, she came up with some graphs
I
to,
I did, yes, because I couldn't figure it out. I kept looking at the dates, going, okay, now when did they do this and when did they do that? So I took the time to make a little calendar grid and put color highlights in, just so I could keep track of when and what they were presenting, because it was became a rep schedule, and as we go on with the years, it gets more complicated.
right. So we start off the 47th season. They're doing shows Thursday through
Through Sunday,
Sunday night,
through Sunday night.
and open again with Goodbye Again. And I believe Jim McKenzie is in that one.
He is. He plays a bellhop. As,
Yes. And also through all this time, the curtain times were 8:30, which was typical for theater of that time, and that remained that way for a
up
very
until
long
we
time.
until we built the new space. Our curtain time was 8:30 on weeknights and Saturday nights. So
Yeah. And then we that was followed by Brief Moment,
mhm.
which Jean Sincere was in.
In Brief Moment, we got to hear Jean's singing voice. So she's a vocalist being in Brigadoon, and Peninsula Players doesn't do musicals, but we get to hear her sing. And at that time, a new company member named Rudy Bond learns that he's won a very important award, which is the John Golden Award. So Rudy is originally from Philadelphia. He served in the war and he returned to New York, and he was competing amongst 1,200 other actors for this opportunity. And John Golden was a very prolific producer, writer,
Mhm.
songwriter of shows, and he really understood the struggles that an artist had because he himself moved from Iowa, no, Ohio, as a young boy at 14 until he became a successful lyricist. So he wanted to encourage actors. So he got other producers to agree to this competition, and whoever won got to go to all the Broadway show auditions. So they automatically got a golden ticket into all of these auditions. And Rudy Bond went through the audition process and was one of the 10 finalists for this. And he received news in July that he had won. And he had won the
Exciting.
golden ticket. So he,
And we'll bring him up in a little bit later
and
because
a
he
little
goes
bit
on to
later,
do some
great
other
things.
things.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So they find that out.
And then after that,
And then after that is when Marion Foreman Rathbone makes her first American stage debut in 30 years as Lady Bracknell. And Rodian flew in from Madrid. As an international pilot, he's flying all over, so that he had flown in from Madrid to see his mom perform for that show.
he's a
So they,
good son.
he's a good son. So they get that one up and going. And then the next production starts the festival. So they
Mhm.
open Rain on July
And again,
24th.
Audie, to just to remind people that the festival was this was the first time that the players played with the idea of repertory.
Correct. Yes, they're going to play with repertory and they're going to play 6 nights a week. So they're only taking one night off for during the 2 weeks. They're taking a Wednesday off.
So Richard's thinking is that someone who came up for a week to Door County,
Could see more than one show. So that was the intention there, and possibly even three shows, depending on how long they stayed. If they stayed from a Sunday to a Sunday, that they
so
could.
if you got up on a Sunday, you could see one show,
Mhm.
then a second show during the week, and a third show at the end of the week.
Exactly. Yes. So that's what they're trying this out for 2 weeks, and they start with Rain, which during the production
Of
it
rain.
rains. And Roxy, one of the company members at the time, saved this memory for us in a memory book. When we did Rain, it rained so hard the audience had to come up and stand on the stage until it stopped. Then they went back to their seats after the canopy was pulled over, and it sounded like machine gun fire. And Eddie Collins, who was a member of the cast, would get up on the step of the front and lead everybody in song until the rain stopped. So, so they're still battling weather, but it was a little, at least they were more protected.
And reminding people then with the canopy over the audience, if it rained, they had to keep poking it so it wouldn't
So it wouldn't flood in.
flood
And
in.
I had also heard stories throughout the years too that sometimes they kept buckets in the back because if it rained extra hard and coming down that hill, it would flood in the front row, and they had to bail out the front. So
Yeah.
that's
And then they go on to do quite a few more shows in this 2 week festival. Salome, and Little Foxes, The Importance of Being Earnest Again, that great fun farce Oedipus the King, and Fumed Oak, which I believe was part of a Noel Coward thing.
Right, and it was a double billing, so just like they would with Salome and another show, they had Fumed Oak and Oedipus Rex as a double billing. So and so they would do that, and they would be rehearsing while they're doing it, and rehearsing and putting it up, and in that process. So
So that was a very intense period of 2 weeks where they did all of those shows in a very
exactly,
short time.
and they exactly, and then they um, continued on, and eventually they brought back the first show that they did.
Blight Spirit.
Hmm. Which and that now in today's time we think of Blight Spirit as an old chestnut of a show to do, and it wasn't at the time. It was
No,
right on
because that
Broadway.
that opened in 1941.
So
Yeah.
so that looking at the works that they're doing, they're still bringing in quality work that's popular, not just popular, but it's artistically challenging for everybody.
Hmm. And then with Blight Spirit, they're back to the Thursday through Sunday schedule.
Mm-hmm. Right,
And
and until they throw in Goodbye Again, repeating on a Monday and Tuesday, and then they go to Parlor Story. And they were going to do a review, but something came up, and instead they put Laura in, that they had to cancel the previous season because Julie Bishop couldn't do the show with her movie contract. So now they're able to produce Laura, and Margot and Leo are in that production.
and what had been a tradition for some years and a few to come is a review. Helen, Casey Bragdon, and Richard Fisher wrote a review that would end the season.
That
That
would
was
end the season, and it would
topical
feature.
and full of
Yep.
lots of different performing arts.
Right, exactly. I to and like either a Carol Burnett sketch show with song and dance routines in it, or Saturday Night Live. So they would have always topical satire and little vaudeville acts and things going on to entertain.
So we get to the end of I would seem to think a very ambitious season, and as you had mentioned, this was Leo Lucker's 12th season as the player's leading man, and there was also a 12-year-old in the company that year,
There was. They had another young man come in, and
Larry Jolin from
yeah,
Sturgeon Bay.
he was a member of the community theater. So there's a community theater now in Sturgeon Bay over the past few years that has built up. And Jimmy was in their Christmas pageant. So it needed a youth. And they found a nice young local young man to come in. So it was exciting.
And we've had kids in over many seasons.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, one of the things while you were talking about the festival they did that year, and actually the whole season, was scenically this was really challenging. And talk about Frances McVeigh.
Frances was, it started off as an apprentice in the 30s with the company, and then she went on to become a scenic artist and designer for the Goodman, and also at the Actors Theater Company of Chicago. And she was really talented in the scenery that was done. And this is a little bit of technical theater history to put in at this time. So, in order for everybody to do the shows that quickly and to turn things over, the staging that was presented was different than what you see today. A lot of it was forced perspective painting. So a flat or the backdrop is constructed as a giant canvas. So it is a soft flat or a conventional flat that is stretched with muslin, sized, and then painted so that it could be reused over and over. And that's how they were able to do these shows in repertoire, was with this some of this forced perspective scenery and
That could be easily taken down and put
and
up.
put back up again. So when you look at some of the works that they did from the previous season's Private Lives and Summer for Sketches, you can kind of see that. And when we get into future years, when Jim Moronic joins the company, in 1950. It's a style that he learns and works with her on.
And as I was reading about her, she was known as an something called an automatic spiritualist painter, which of course I had to look up. I was very curious. And it was thought by spiritualists to be a spirit control that was producing the drawing while physically taking control of the medium's body. An alternate term for this is psychic painting. We may call it inspiration today.
Right, yes. And so, but she was a true, artist in that aspect. So she would return and paint the scenery and design the scenery, and she would get wonderful credit for her work. So not only were the Fishers presenting and pulling together talented performers, they were also gathering talented scenic artists to do this as well. And it was a real company atmosphere. And in today's production world, we have someone specifically who's doing the scenic painting or doing the prop design shopping. When the company was forming at this time, Caroline and Margot were going out and helping to secure furniture props and other things that they needed. So it was a real, and the acting company was helping at strike to take things down or helping to paint the scenery. So it was a real company adventure and a real bonding experience for everybody, and they were all in it together, and it was just a great memories for all of them. And
Right. So we get to the end of the 47th season, and people move on and do their winter activities. And then Rudy Bond had an interesting story after he left the Players.
he did, and Rudy wrote a book about his time, and Rudy, with his golden ticket, became involved with A Streetcar Named Desire,
The original
and
production.
the original Broadway production. And he wrote in the first sentence of his book here that his eyes first rolled over the words "A Streetcar Named Desire" as he was on a train, um, bumping along the rails heading back to Grand Central Station after a triumphal 10 weeks of acting in Fish Creek, Wisconsin's stock company. So, um,
And
he
he went on to have quite a career.
quite a career. And when he was also there, he also became one of the first. He had run into Ilian Kazan at the auditions that he was going through for the Golden Ticket Award. And not only was he approached by Leo and won the Golden Ticket, but Ilya also invited him to become a member of what was to become the Actors Studio that started in 1947. So after Rudy Bond leaves us in the many characters that he played that season, he becomes one of the first students at the Actors Studio with Paul Newman, Marlon Brando, and a variety of other just astounding people.
Hmm.
And Rudy is not considered a leading man type of performer. He's a character actor. So he does get cast in A Streetcar Named Desire as one of the poker buddies of Stanley's poker buddies. But his career is extensive beyond that. He film, television, and roles with Burt Lancaster and Clark Gable and a bunch of variety of other people. And
Very exciting.
it is just exciting. So
And then, the rest of the Fisher family, I think Marion, Rodian's mother, went back to England.
she did. She went back to the British Isles after visiting with her grandkids. And Caroline and the children are back off to Rome because Rodian is still flying that route. And Richard, at this time, he's going to head off to Washington, D.C. to see if he can get a job with the diplomatic corps. And Leo goes back to New York. And,
And
and
Margot went back to California.
Margot went back to California. And I'm not sure what's going on with Margot. I'm still trying to figure it out. But at some point, she and Cedric break up. And
Cedric Francis.
Frederick Francis break up. And she, by 1948, is in a new marriage with another Hollywood movie executive and talent agent named Michael C. Levy Jr. And Michael's father was a Hollywood agent and impresario and was the agent for Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Mary Crawford and was one of the founding members of the Academy, the Oscars, the Motion Picture Academy.
Mhm.
And so I'm still wrapping my brain around that one too. But
No, it's always fascinating for me to hear about these Hollywood connections to the players.
it
Colorful.
is the little rabbit holes I fall down and like, is that really her? Is and so I was like, well, wait, there it is. I saw the marriage announced thing.
So
Okay.
yeah. So we get through a very ambitious 1947 season. So Audie, once again, my pleasure to be with you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
And we'll see you next time.